Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello everyone and welcome along to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. I'm sure coffee is the only order of the day after a very long weekend of watching football, and then of course Rory McIlroy and his crowning glory last night. Peter Canavan is with myself and Rory this morning, and it's just been such a weekend, emotional drama to watch somebody like that. Even in studio last night, Peter, we had it on in the background because every single person in Ireland was just glued to this magnificent Irish sporting occasion. It was incredible, wasn't it?
No, I was watching Andy McGinley and Kieran Whelan on the Sunday game. It was a golf on last
Split screening.
There was golf on.
Well, I was back in Shane Larry, to be honest. But look, it was some finish. It was some entertainment last night.
Yeah, it was outrageous. And I think, look, Rory, it's probably just a sign of Irish sports fans and the way that we've become used to split screening so many magic moments across the weekend. But I think Rory McIlroy had his crowning glory that so many people in this country will be glad that to see that he finally was able to do something.
Yeah, and it was like to see the outpouring of emotion. It's very unusual in golf. They're normally almost robotic. I mean, I suppose if you were looking at the Scheffler situation, particularly over the last couple of years, that it was like he didn't even really enjoy winning the Masters. So to see Rory's reaction and to see Shane and everybody there, and it was just, you just could not help but be, overjoyed for him, really. It's going to create some situation around the RTÉ Sports Awards this year, Jacqui. It'll be quite a very interesting one now. Rory, are you busy in December?
Well, that'll be your job when you start making those phone calls. Look forward to that. Well, we might have Team of the Year to talk about as well, and you wonder from a Gaelic football perspective who that's going to be. And I wonder, will it be Tyrone, Peter Canavan? Because there does seem to be a bit of excitement about this team. I was slagging Enda last night, saying his former teammates were getting really carried away about this performance. But I think Tyrone have definitely given people something to shout about after that victory against Cavan yesterday. Yeah,
I didn't see it that way, to be honest. I didn't think it was an astonishing performance or anything near it. I think Andy mentioned how poor Cavan were, and I would agree with that. I was very surprised. Like a lot of those Cavan players have Ulster Championship medals from 5 years ago when they won an Ulster title. They have got nowhere near that level since. And from a Tyrone perspective, at times, yes, they played really well, but there was occasions, and very similar to last year, whereby they had a big lead against Cavan. And at one stage, the start of the second half, I think there were 13 up. And within the space of 10 minutes, it was back to 6 or 7 points. Cavan had a goal chance. They were playing with the breeze at that stage. And Brian Kennedy had gone off injured. So from being in a brilliant position, very comfortable, they had to fight for it. And it took on Kilpatrick's goal to swing things back in their favour again. So there were some good aspects of their play, but I don't think Malachy was exaggerating when he said they still have plenty to work on if they're going to take on and defeat Armagh in the semi-final. Yeah, and look, Rory, to be fair, that's a bigger acid test, and I think from a Tyrone perspective, you can only beat what you have in front of you from yesterday. But when you've got 13 different scorers and ability to actually play some of those classy moments that Peter's talking about, I think they're the things that Malachy's going to pull from this team and say we are getting there. Yeah, like I was impressed by Tyrone. I know maybe there is that argument that people might necessarily have been getting a little bit carried away. You have to bear in mind their best player didn't start the game. And I think if it was, I get a sneaky suspicion that had they been going into, I'm not too sure how serious Dara's injury is, and I would absolutely say with any fear of contradiction, he will start against Armagh because that's when they'll really need him. If only there was someone on this call who could tell us that. Who might know about that. What's wrong with him? You're very sure he's going to start. Yeah, well, I don't know. Obviously, look, you obviously know, but
I doubt if they felt that they were going to be troubled in any way. Who knows? Maybe they might have taken a chance. I think the fact that they were holding them back, I suppose, to a certain extent, and plan for Armagh was probably a wiser call. That's obviously me just presupposing. Look, they did really kind of cruise through the game. I think Peter's point about Cavan being poor is def, and I mentioned it last night with you. They didn't really raise a gallop. I thought they were very disappointing in lots of ways. They only really kind of got going sort of midway through the second half when I felt Tyrone sort of, started to ease up. The thing that I'm loving about, like, Tyrone have been producing a very, very high caliber and quality of footballer. And I think they're also one of the teams that I think these rules will suit because they're very skillful players. And when you marry that with a return to form for someone like Kieran McGeary, who definitely looks to me like he's trimmer, he may be a little bit fitter, he's definitely sharper, he looks like he's reborn to a certain extent. He was well deserving of his Man of the Match awards yesterday. I thought he was outstanding. They've got an excellent midfield. They obviously have Dazzler up front, Dara to come back in. Rory played really well himself. Top class keeper. I don't know what's wrong with Padraig Hampsey. They will definitely need Paddy back, I would imagine, in that full back line. But they have a lot of depth. I would make the game between themselves and Armagh very much a 50-50. And I give Tyrone a really good chance in that. But I think from yesterday's point of view, it was just a case of job done. I thought Niall Morgan's interview post-match was interesting in that, look, it was Tyrone's first proper championship win in Ulster for a while. And their record in Ulster of late hasn't been great. And we know Malachy is a championship animal. And I think they'll go into this game with Armagh licking their lips.
Yeah, I think so too. Will Dara be playing, Peter?
I think they'll need him to be playing. It wasn't a case of they were holding him back, Rory, to be honest.
Okay.
That was the case with Matty Donnelly. Dara, Matty Donnelly and Paddy Hampsey were all injured. Right. A week before the game, Matty came round, was fit enough to take his place on the bench, and then he came on. Dara wasn't fit to take his place on the bench, and I don't think they would have took Cavan for granted, to be honest. Bear in mind that Cavan took them to extra time last year. It was no, he was out for injury. He has 2 weeks, so you're hoping that he'll be all right. And in terms of the quality of fare, it's not a case of downplaying Tyrone at this stage. After 25 minutes in yesterday's game between the two teams, there was 15 turnovers. The week prior up in Ballybofey, there was 15 turnovers over the course of the game. Yeah. So if you go out to play again a good team like Donegal or an Armagh, and you cough up possession anywhere on the pitch, you're going to be hurt at the other end. And that happened a number of times yesterday when Cavan coughed it up. Tyrone went the full length of the pitch and got a score. So there's just a few aspects of the game that they need to tidy up on, and there's not a chance they're going to dominate in the middle sector to the same extent that they did yesterday against Cavan. Candy very influential, and the amount of breaks that they picked up. So they're not going to be as dominant in that sector, I have no doubt, because Armagh have about 4 or 5 giants to call in there. So it sets up. It's a brilliant clash. It's a one that both counties are really looking forward to, and I'm assuming it's going to be in Clonus, so it'll be a special atmosphere that day.
Yeah, it will. What's your feel on Armagh, Peter? I know it's hard to get a sense of them because they looked so different at the weekend from the team that we saw in the All-Ireland final last year with only 5 of the team in it. But, he seemed to have found another few players, and they looked like, again, no more than with Tyrone, with what they were facing. Antrim put it up to them for a little while, but, eventually they blew them away. So what's your read of what you've seen from Armagh so far?
Yeah, there's a couple of standout takes from that game. Their bench, their strength and depth, and we spoke about this before during the National League. And yet Callum O'Neill, Tomas McCormick, both were exceptional for Armagh. They're massive finds he didn't have. Now he's been forced to try out a lot of these players, but they've given him some response, in fairness. And Cian McConville came off the bench, looked very sharp. Jameer Hall likewise. So they have options, and moving forward, the way the game is played, the last 10 or 15 minutes of a game, he'll turn around and look at his bench, knowing that he's players that can make a difference. So if they have 2 weeks for a number of injuries themselves to clear up, it appears that none of them are long term. So he'll have a strong panel to pick from. But the other aspect about the Saturday's game was the performance from Antrim. And a lot of people said, right, they've been talking the talk here, fighting for Corrigan Park. Well done off the pitch. You've done well, but you need to back it up. And a lot of people were worried that they wouldn't. And two aspects. First of all, they needed to come out fighting. They needed a gutsy display. My God, they certainly did that. And they took on Armagh physically, which I didn't think they were capable of. The tackling was intense. There was a lot of hard hits within the first 20 minutes. So it's as good a performance from Antrim as I've seen in a long time. On top of the guts and fight and determination, you're saying, well, do they have the class? Well, Paddy McBride proved that, some of the scores he scored, you'll not see better in the championship this year. So they added everything to it, just couldn't finish out. They didn't have the same strength and depth that Armagh had going into the closing stages, but a really spirited performance from Antrim.
Yeah, and 123 is some scoring, Rory, as well. They did put on a bit of a show at times.
Yeah, and Ryan McQuillan, I think in the corner scored 1-5, and like Peter mentioned, Paddy McBride 9 points. Was one of the, I suppose, chief proponents of getting the game to Corrigan Park. Really articulate guy again, and he came out and spoke so well afterwards. It was an extraordinary match. Is that a record? 134. I'd love to know. I don't ever remember a score in championship football 134. Certainly not in Ulster anyway, Peter.
I'm wondering, would Leinster have racked up? Sorry, would Dublin have racked up something against like that against one of the weaker teams? 134. A lot, isn't it?
I can't recall anybody in Ulster certainly doing it, and there's very few 2-pointers in that as well.
Yeah, it was just I don't know whether it's the size of the pitch. It was a loose game, which I think kind of suited both teams, and just look, Armagh are a class above, and that showed in the end. But I thought 11 points nearly flattered them to the extent that it probably didn't do justice to the performance Antrim put into the game, particularly in that first half. They had Armagh in 6s and 7s at certain points, and they really did come out and laid it all out there. But look, I think the thing for them, no different, and we can probably get on and speak about Offaly and Westmeath in a minute. The Tailteann Cup, I think this year will be a fantastic competition, because there's some excellent teams that, if they embrace it with the right mindset, will make it a really competitive competition to play in. And you could throw a blanket over a number of winners there. Potentially.
Sorry, Rory, you just said it. If they embrace it, and that is totally down. It's not down to managers. All the managers are involved will want their teams going hard at it, and they'll target to win it. But there's a leadership group within every squad, and it's up to the players now within those squads to say, right, we didn't do it. We came close, but some boys will head off maybe and not even see the year out. So it's up to strong leaders, strong players within each county. And if they say, right, we need to train hard, we need to go for this, then it really does set up a very competitive Tailteann Cup, and there'll be a lot of good games in that.
Well, with that in mind, it's funny, Rory, you say that, and Peter's right. It is going to come down to the players. After that Kildare Westmeath game on Saturday night, which was brilliant, by the way, I heard Luke Loughlin getting interviewed after the game, and one of the, maybe the third or fourth question in, he himself raised it and said, we have to go again for the Tailteann now, because we have to win it, because we have to get back up to this level. And I actually was in the car and I was thinking, God, that's really encouraging to hear a player talking like that, because you can imagine how crushed he was after the defeat, and it was a really tight game. But actually to have the wherewithal to immediately recognise in the situation, I'm a leader here and I need to gather my team and we need to win this competition. And I actually think that's really good for the Tailteann Cup to hear that kind of talk.
Yeah, and then we heard Desi as well on this podcast a couple of weeks ago, outlining and articulating the benefits to winning it, let alone the fact that you keep your panel of players together for a much longer period, and obviously that gives you a good platform to build something going into the following season, as opposed to just, down the tools and basically nobody seeing each other for 7 or 8 months again until you start your preseason ahead of the National League. There's holidays, opportunities to play in Croke Park, opportunities for live television. There's a separate individual all-star type awards benefits and carrots. So there's loads of little things to go after. But I suppose it comes back to the point Peter made. I mean, you are dealing with a different type of modern intercounty player, and they will obviously have opportunities to travel. There will be phone calls, I would imagine, coming in from America now. And that's the real danger, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the point. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
And, some players disgruntled, maybe not getting the amount of game time that they felt they were justified in getting. So, teams have to stand firm, put the shoulder behind the wheel and give it a good lash, because it's not going to be a competition. It's going to be easy one.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's talk about Kildare then in that win, Peter, because I heard it even being described by Brian Flanagan as a character building win. And it seems to me that they feel their character has been questioned, rightly so, maybe in some quarters over the last number of years. But this could be a defining performance by this Kildare team. That's certainly the sense I got from listening to him.
Absolutely. First of all, I wouldn't dismiss Westmeath too lightly just because they struggled to win in the National League. They didn't struggle to perform well. They had a lot of really good performances. So that was a very tricky game, and a lot of people fancied Westmeath to come out on top. What will please Brian Flanagan most, and you've said it, they have been criticised in recent years, and I don't think that criticism has been harsh. I think for the quality of players that they have failed to get the best out of themselves. So that, yes, they were coming in with serious question marks over them and over their character. Could they grind out a really tough game in a tough game against good opposition? Well, for a good part of it, they were behind, and they looked as if they were struggling and they would have to dig deep, and they did. They fought their way out of it. One of the 2 long balls in, 2 goals. The 2 goals were the difference, both coming from long balls in. One fell short back in that. That one, a brilliant traditional goal, if you want it. Long diagonal ball in, big full forward catches it, turns, buries it in the roof of the net. Superb goal by Alex Byrne. But yeah, it was a spreaded performance. Quality wise, again, plenty to work on for the semi-final against Louth, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's a game that they'll be going in thinking, if we play as well as we can here, we can win it. And it's a brilliant prize to make it through to the Leinster final. But yeah, Brian Flanagan has them moving the way he wants to, but still big improvement needed.
I think there's a flicker, a little flickers and little embers of life coming back into the Leinster Football Championship, Jacqui. I don't necessarily look. Dublin will win it this year, but they will be beaten soon enough. I think at some point over the next 2 or 3 years, someone will beat them. I think we've already seen it happen at minor level. Even this year at under-20s, now their under-20s are through to a quarter final, Dublin's under-20s, but they were beaten by Meath in the group stages. Last year, Kildare won Leinster. Like there is. Dublin teams are not dominating in the underage. That is eventually about and should translate. I think that the other teams in Leinster are improving. And does that mean that it's very difficult to kind of figure out whether or not that means Dublin have disimproved so much to make it competitive, or whether the other teams have improved enough to kind of shift the balance the other way? But either way, the Leinster Football Championship might just be about to, develop a little bit of a resurgence.
But the reality is, though, Peter, you're probably still going to see Dublin facing Meath, and nobody's going to give me the prayer. Then they'll get Kildare or Louth in a Leinster Championship final. And as Rory said, at some point, maybe they're going to get beaten. But I don't think anybody would feel it's in the next year or maybe even next year, just the way that the teams are going right now.
Yeah, I would say that's wishful thinking, Rory.
Is it? We live in hope, Peter.
Well, I suppose Dublin, when you see the players, the caliber of the players that they're minus at the minute, they're not at the level that they were a couple of years ago. But against Tyrone last league game defensively, there was questions asked them. Wicklow scored 18 points against them yesterday. So teams maybe going in against them will think that they can hurt them, but you always felt yesterday that they had the ability to step it up when required. Moving against better opposition, if they didn't have Cavan on that field, then I would say yes, the likes of Kildare and Meath would certainly feel that they could put it up to them and take them. But I still think there's a gulf in class there, and Dublin are still a good bit ahead of the pack.
It's funny, last night chatting to Kieran Whelan, Rory, about the goalkeeper situation, he does genuinely have concerns. Just, having your fourth goalkeeper on show there yesterday at this stage of the year, I know that there could be injuries maybe sitting in the background. We don't actually know what's going on with Cluxton, with Comerford, and I think Kieran's point really was, until we know what the situation is with Dublin and who's going to be playing in goal, it's very hard to actually build a team around it, given the new rules and the importance of the goalkeeper and what they actually bring to the table.
It's a very, very fair point. The goalkeeper, there was a sense when the new rules came in, because effectively the short kick out had been rendered redundant, that the goalkeeper's prominence was going to be diluted in some way. But I don't think that's the case at all. Look, obviously the short kickouts were having a major impact on the game. It was an easy enough skill by and large. I think where it's become much more pronounced now is that laser-like low trajectory one that Cluxton used to favour back in the traditional days, when he might have had a Paul Flynn running from deep, or a Diarmuid Connolly on the other wing. And I think that type of a weapon will still be a huge weapon. We could see Patton has that in his armory.
Yeah,
Morgan has
well.
it.
Yeah.
Begin has it. And that's one that you're going to need. Like, your alternative is the Lamper, which is effectively now a lottery kick, a 50-50, which was the one that we all love, but it's the one that goalkeepers and coaches hate. So I think definitely the question marks around who's going to be in goal is a big one for Dublin. Also, they probably need a bit more time and minutes into John Small. He's back. He'll be a huge, huge anchor to throw into the middle in the heart of your defence. A proper old school stopper, which you're probably going to need now again with these new rules. I would have other question marks around Dublin. I think their midfield will be found out. I think they are definitely weak there, and as Peter mentioned, it is a huge reliance on probably one of the best players in the game in Conor Callaghan. But is that going to be enough to go and challenge, make semi-finals weekend, get to an All-Ireland final? Big questions for Dublin this year, definitely, and we didn't find out enough answers, I suppose, in Auckland.
Yeah.
But we might find a few more now when they play Meath in the semi-final.
Yeah, and they'll be on the road for that as well, again, Peter. And the reality is, Dublin on the road this year, as you would have seen in Omagh, have not been fantastic. And I guess it's really just the questions about Dublin when we find them out, because it's going to be a long time before they have to pay what we would expect is going to be a very competitive game. Unlike, let's say, Tyrone, Armagh, who are getting it in fast spades right now at this point of the season.
Yeah, and you're right about the venue. I think the semi-finals being taken out of Croke Park will help and enhance the game, and there'll be a much better atmosphere. And you hope that the other counties you'll get a kick out of them, and I'm sure you will. Dublin and Meath, what it be in Portlaoise possibly. I'm not too sure if the venue.
I wouldn't be surprised, Peter, and this might sound odd now, but I would nearly suggest Nolan Park in Kilkenny would be a good venue for it, because you've got a lot of seats. Number one, I think it holds about 26,000. Kilkenny's reasonably easy to get to, maybe not for Meath, but to me that would be a better venue than Portlaoise.
Yeah, and I've been at a few hurling games and you're right. There's a brilliant atmosphere there in Dublin Park. So I would absolutely, if it was there.
Oh, Peter's just said it's confirmed for Portlaoise. So yeah, there you go.
Right, well. Wishful thinking.
Wishful
again.
thinking. Handy place though in terms of transport. Nice and nice and quick down the motorway and in and out. Yeah, but like it'll still be a good atmosphere there, and it'll probably be full. I don't know what the capacity in Portlaoise is. I think it might be around 20, so it'll be close to full, which make a great atmosphere, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And like, listen, it's as much about the opportunity as all of that too, Peter, because I think, you know, when you do take these on the road, getting them out of Croke Park, getting to actually sort of go and build the game, but also for the teams, actually, what's on the line here is actually significant as well.
It's Stewart Day, and it's some opportunity for the like of these Meath players. It's disappointing that they have a few injuries to key players, but look, they will be going at this game thinking if they can play the way they did in the second half over 70 minutes, you know, so the quality of their fare yesterday in the second half, the way they went about their business, it was a throwback to the old Meath days where you were thinking at half time they're gone, they've no chance, but it was a spirited comeback. And but you mentioned about the kickouts earlier, and I think that's one area Meath have a number of bigger men in around the middle. Kickouts now in the modern game are so vital. We seen yesterday how Cavan struggled on their own kickout, and the amount of scores thrown. I think they had maybe 6 scores directly from Cavan kickouts. Week before was the exact same. So if they can get a stranglehold on midfield, get their supporters behind them, they can certainly ask questions of Dublin as well. But mind you, Dublin have their fair share of big men around the middle sector too.
Yeah, true. One last point to finish on, lads, because even in that game, Rory, Meath were 10 points down at half-time. They end up winning by 7. A 17-point swing in modern game football is just like unheard of. Like you're talking about record scores in Ulster and all this kind of thing. But like, what is a safe lead in Gaelic football now?
Yeah, that's a good question. There was a joke when when the scoring rate started to soar in a hurling context. I think was it Michael Duignan made the joke like that a 9-point lead is the most dangerous lead in hurling these days, you know. And you could probably now say the same for Gaelic football, and which is, look, I think it's another really good positive. I would probably hazard a guess that this will settle down. I think as managers and as players and as defending improves, I think the scores will probably start to drift downwards in an average. Totals going across all the games. I think there's a sort of a fizzy pop nature to the football at the minute because we're still very much in experimental mode. It would be foolish to think that these entire rules experiment is in some way a fait accompli. It isn't. So I think over time this year, and I think as the championship heightens, I think as the games become more important, we also know, I always remember Derek Cavan, he used to always say to me that like what you could do in a first round Munster championship game playing Limerick or Tipperary, that you'd be blown for a free. He said by the time you got to an All-Ireland final, you could get away with murder. You know, you could literally do whatever you want. The ref would never blow the whistle. So what will probably happen as the games increase in their significance and their importance, I think what you will definitely also see is referees swallow the whistle a wee bit, which will allow defenders get more physical contact, because I think that's potentially one aspect of Gaelic football that is being ignored in this new rules experiment. You don't want it to become non-contact. You do want that physical element still to be there. It's one of the things that makes the game, you know, so attractive for an awful lot of people to watch. And I just get that fizzy pop nature to football at the minute that hasn't really settled down as of yet. And I would suspect over time those totals will start to drift back downwards again.
But Jacqui, you mentioned the big turnarounds. I think Meath won at 120 to 6 points. But I still can't believe that defenders are happy to sit off forwards and let them have a go. And a number of the scores we've seen over the weekend, you know, the time to steady up, time to take the 3 or 4 steps, kick it over the bar. A defence wouldn't let a forward go through unopposed and give them a free shot for a goal. So why would you give them time outside, especially a couple of with the breeze, a team with the breeze? You're asking for trouble if you sit back. So I think you'd like to think that the defences are going to push out and be more aggressive, and you'll not see as many 2-pointers as the season moves on.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Fun to watch all the same, though.
Yeah.
It has been good. Lads, we'll leave it there. Enjoy your week, and we'll be back, no doubt, Peter, to chat Tyrone, Armagh as we get a little bit closer to the time. But to everybody else, have a great week, and we'll be back on Thursday to look ahead to the championship. Hurling starting as well at the weekend. We'll be back chatting about that, and of course the football championships. So myself and Rory will chat to you then.
Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.